My name's Aiston. Access bars changed my life. My journey towards access bars actually started 6 years ago. I was out walking with my wife and our two dogs when suddenly I felt really tired and my legs started aching, and I didn't really understand what was going on because we hadn't really walked very far. And it was so bad I even mentioned to the wife, "Oh, my legs have gone really sore," but we just carried on and went home and everything became all right again. But every time I went for a walk over the next 2 weeks, my legs would start aching, sometimes after 40 or 50 yards, sometimes after 100, 200 yards. But it was always the same feeling, like I couldn't take a step forward, and my back became really stiff and sore. But every time I rested, I came back to normal, so I just thought it was a bad back. Well, this carried on, like I said, for 2 weeks, and then one day I was out for a walk, and when I got back to the car, it never came back, and I found it really hard to walk. So, to cut a long story short, I ended up in A&E, and then they admitted us to hospital because they thought I might have had some spinal entrapment, or it might have been MS or something like that. So I was in hospital for 3 days. I wasn't able to raise my legs when I was on the bed, and I could only shuffle across the floor. But then on the third day I became all right and my movement returned to normal. So they discharged us, and I actually said, "Well, what happens if it happens again?" And they said, "Oh, I'll go to your doctor." So I got home, and in an hour it had happened again. And basically it carried on like this. I would go for maybe a day where I was relatively normal, could walk all right, and then all of a sudden my legs would become weak. And then after about 3 weeks it started affecting my arms as well. So of course I was back and forward to the doctors, and they just kept saying they didn't know what it was, and it could be psychological, which I sort of disagreed with, because I didn't feel at that time I was under any stress or pressure. I felt quite good, happy with how life was going. So in the end, my doctor sent us to see a neurologist, and the neurologist said it could be psychological. But he also said he would put us forward for neurological tests, like an MRI scan and electromyograph test. And he said, "Oh, will you go and see a psychiatrist?" And I said, "Well, I'll do anything to get better." By then, this was 6 months after the illness had started, and it was getting worse all the time. When I was having a bad spell, it was harder and harder to move. When it first started, I could shuffle up the stairs. After 6 months, when I had a bad spell, I couldn't get up the stairs at all, and ended up sleeping on the couch a lot of nights. So I waited quite a while to see a psychologist, around about 6 months actually. And when I went to see the psychologist, he said that you need to see a neurologist. So he wrote back to the doctors and said he couldn't find anything psychologically wrong, and he thought I needed to see a neurologist. So I expected to hear back from the doctor in the couple of months after that to say where they were going to take this next. And when I hadn't heard anything after another 3 months had gone by, I actually phoned my doctors and said, "Well, what's happening now?" And they basically said, "Oh, well, you've been to a neurologist and you've been to a psychologist, so we don't know what to do with you." So I was taken aback and gobsmacked, because obviously I'd had a lot of time off work, and I was really, really worried about losing my job. I'd been a civil servant for nearly 25 years, and I didn't want to get sacked for being off sick, and I was desperate for solutions. I was on the internet all the time looking for answers, but it was just a nightmare. There were so many conditions that it could be, and but the symptoms didn't exactly match mine. So I really pushed my doctors to send us somewhere else. So actually I ended up sending us to a place in Liverpool that's supposed to be the best sort of neurological centre in the north of England. So I went and I met the guy, but unfortunately when I met the consultant, I was perfectly fine. I was having the best day I'd had for months. I could walk normally, I could raise my arms normally. So explaining how my symptoms affected us, it was very hard to explain when you say, well, I can't lift my arm, but what's blocking it? It just won't lift. It's when you can show somebody it's one thing, but when you try to explain it, it was really difficult. But anyhow, he booked us in, but all they did was repeat tests that I already had. And if you keep asking the same question, you're going to keep getting the same answer. They didn't find anything. And basically, I went back 3 times, and then I received a letter off this consultant saying that he would speak to me shortly and discuss the findings so far. And then 6 months later, when I hadn't heard from him, I rang the hospital and they said, oh, you've been discharged because you never got back to us. I said, well, I was waiting for the consultant to get back to me. But anyhow, just more time went past, and I started looking at alternative therapies. I tried a few different ones. I tried acupuncture. I went to a physiotherapist, but the physiotherapist said there was nothing you could do. We can do for you because you need to see a neurologist. And I said, yeah, but a neurologist won't see us because they think it's psychological, and the psychologist says it's neurological. So it was just a vicious circle, really. But all during this time, my condition was worsening and worsening, and it got to the point where I needed to be in a wheelchair when I was having a bad day. I couldn't move at all. I couldn't even brush my own teeth. But I also had the relief that I'd maybe be bad for 3 days, but then I'd have a day when I was all right. So there was still that bit of normality. But that all changed in September 2015. I stopped having good days. I had no day where I could raise my hands above my head. And although I had days where I didn't need the wheelchair, where I could walk, shuffle, or even sometimes on a really good day get up the stairs, it was always a struggle, and everything become really, really difficult to do. So I became desperate for answers. I even went to see a man travelled all the way to London with my mum to see a man there who'd done something called divine straightening, and he was a guy called Alexander Tosca. And basically I laid on a bed and he took a photograph of where my feet were to show me body alignment, and there was like a 3 centimetre gap between my left foot and my right foot in the level, and he waved his hand over my body and then took another photograph and my feet were level, and that sort of amazed me. I mean, it was like, how can you do that? And he explained it was all energy running through your body, and I'd never really heard of energy healing. I'd heard, I knew about, I didn't even understand Reiki. I'd never really knew anybody who'd had it or anything, so energy healing was all new to us. So I'd explained to him what was wrong, and he'd done a healing over me, and actually I was all right for probably a week or so, and it sort of really picked up. But then I just went back to normal. I just went back, well, not being normal, which was not being able to move again and that. And I was too unfit to go to work from November 2015, and I started to think that the only way I was going to get better was the way it came. It would just go on its own. I started to believe that was the only hope for me, that it was some kind of virus and would just stop. But that never happened, and time went on and on and on, and I did start to despair. When you're in a wheelchair for 5 or 6 days on the trot, when previously you've had a very active life, playing golf, walking dogs, fishing, and not being able to do that anymore, it really, although I'm a very optimistic person, it really started to bring me down, and I was starting to become depressed. But then one day in October 2017, I had a friend who was suffering from severe depression, and they were going for counselling, and he told me a couple of weeks before that he was going for something called bars therapy, and I said, what's that? And he said, I don't know. So I said, all right. Well, anyhow, he went for the bars therapy and he came to see me straight afterwards. And when he walked into the room, it looked to me like it was a different person. He looked absolutely amazing. And this, my friend was really depressed and he always looked down and like the weight of the world was on his shoulders. He was standing tall, he was shining, there was smiling in his eyes. It was absolutely amazing. I goes, wow, what happened? He goes, I had this bars therapy. And he said, straight away, I just felt amazing. I just felt wonderful. And I was like, wow. I said, well, what was it? He says, oh, it's like tapping on your head. And I thought, tapping on your head? I said, and I've done that. I sort of was a bit, sort of, well, that's not going to work for me because, you know, he was obviously suffering from depression where I thought of my symptoms as physical, where I thought of his as mental. So I could understand why working on the head would work on him. So I never really looked into it because I thought when he mentioned tapping on the head, I thought it meant EFT therapy. And I'd actually tried that on myself and amongst all the other things I'd tried over the previous few years, and it didn't do anything for me. So I just thought, well, if it's anything to do with tapping, it's not going to work for me. But anyhow, another couple of weeks went past, and then he came to see me again. And he walked in, and he still looked amazing. And I said, oh, you're still looking great. He says, bars has changed my life. It's absolutely changed my life. I feel wonderful. And I thought, and what's it called again? He goes, it's called bars therapy. And I said, who done it? And he said, it's a lady called Pauline from Wishing Well Therapies up at Gretna. So I thought, oh, right. So as soon as he went, I was on the internet looking up Access Bars Therapy and Wishing Well Therapies, and I seen Pauline's name and website, and she offered bars as one of the therapies that she offered. And I looked at the price and everything, and it's like, you know, £45 for an hour and a half session is like, seemed like a real bargain. I mean, I'd been going to see osteopaths and paying them £50 for half an hour, so it seemed like a bargain. It felt like nothing to lose by having a go. But when I researched it on the internet, what really sold it to me as a treatment was a video that they put on. They were talking to a neurologist, and it actually taken a scan of somebody's brain. And when they showed the scan of the brain immediately before they had bars, and immediately after, the brain had completely changed. And it's like, how is that possible? And even the neurologist said, this doesn't happen. But basically, the brainwaves had calmed down. They weren't firing off all over the place. It was like, instead of these thoughts going everywhere, everything was all calm. And I thought, wow, that's amazing. So I rang Pauline to make an appointment, and I was very limited to where I could go because of my disability. I knew it was going to be quite difficult for me to get even up to Gretna or get somebody to take me to Gretna to Pauline's. So I had to wait to have an appointment with her at Morton Manor Community Centre in Carlisle, because I knew I'd be able to get somebody to take me there if I was having a really bad day. So I had to wait about 3 weeks, and 3 weeks seems a long time when you've been waiting 5.5 years or so for a treatment. But so I went, and although I was filled with hope when I went, because like I say, I am an optimistic person, my expectations weren't super high, because obviously I'd tried various things and nothing had a long-lasting effect. So I went up to Morton Manor and met Pauline, and went to a room. And when I went, although I could walk, I couldn't stride out. I was shuffling, and I couldn't raise my arms any higher than this, and which is how I'd basically been for 2 years. So I laid on the bed, and then we started doing the therapy. And what struck me was, I expected like a strong sort of touch on the head, but it wasn't. It was so light. Felt like hardly any touch at all, and sort of in my mind was, that's not going to do anything. But while the therapy was going on, I'm quite a chatterbox, so we just talked away about things, and we spoke about how my illness has affected us and any sort of anxieties I had and things like that. And Pauline explained that you can clear away blockages by using a statement, so she was doing a clearing statement while we were talking, but we just had a good crack basically. But while the treatment was going on, it was like strange things happening in the body, like feeling cold coming up your legs and into your stomach, or a shiver running through you, or maybe seeing a colour like a gold or something like that you couldn't explain and made no sense, but just, and my stomach was going gurgling away and that. But I didn't really feel anything physical or anything happen during the treatment. But immediately after, when Pauline said, right, that's the treatment finished, just lay there for a while, I felt very, very relaxed. I mean, the most relaxed I'd probably felt 10 years, never mind 5 or 6 years. But then I sat up on the edge of the bed and I thought, I feel different. And I went like this, and my arms just came straight up in the air. And when I tried to lift my leg, it just lifted straight in the air. I thought, that's amazing. I hadn't felt anything physical happen while I was having the treatment. How can this happen? How can I move my arms and legs? And it was like, after nearly 2 years of being trapped, I can only describe it as if I'd been tied up and somebody cut the ropes and my arms had just flew out. And following this was a feeling of elation. I was overjoyed. I was just, and it wasn't just the fact that I could move my arms and legs, which was a miracle in itself. It was the fact that I felt a weight had been lifted off. I felt lighter. Lighter is the word that comes to mind, and it's clearer. It's just like, wow. And to be honest, I didn't know what to do with myself. I felt so excited. I didn't know whether to go for a walk or, it's like, what? I really, really, it was a feeling I'd never had before. And the first thought that came into my head, I want other people to feel what I'm feeling right now, because it just felt amazing. And basically, since then, I've never been ill at all. And I have been back to Pauline for another treatment. I went back 3 weeks later. Just, although I was moving all right, I just felt there was still something not needed moved, something holding us back from being me. So 3 weeks later I went back, and after that treatment I can only say that it was something subtle going on, almost like a gradual increase in awareness and clarity, and everything seemed to come into focus. And it's like everything, well, there's a mantra that goes along with access bars. It's all of life comes to me with ease, joy and glory. And I know it sounds corny, but that's exactly how I felt. Everything seemed to be easier. Every time I'd done a job that previously I would be sort of down about doing or feel worried about doing, I'd done it and it was like, well, that was easy. Everything I'd done became easier, but I was also became clear about the future and what I wanted to do. And where before I'd obviously been thinking, because I was now physically capable of going back to work, I knew by I was looking at a job, but if it felt right, if it felt heavy or light, whether it was right for me. So that guided me to making the right decisions for me. And for the first time ever in my life, it wasn't anybody else's version of Neil Aiston. I was the Neil Aiston. I was myself for the first time, and it was like all the limiting beliefs and thoughts and judgments had all left me, and now I was free to make my own thoughts and judgments as me, not by what other people were telling me. And now I am just, every day I feel pure joy. And as a consequence of how this affected me, Pauline's actually trained me to do access bars on other people. So I've been gifting it to family and friends over the last couple of weeks. And the one thing that they all say afterwards, or most of them say, is they feel lighter and more awake. And the more awake it resonates with me, because that's how I feel every day now. I feel like I'm seeing the world properly for the first time, where before I was tired and heavy-eyed. Now I'm wide-eyed and bush-tailed. So it's and it's great being able to gift it to other people, and not everybody's going to have the profound feelings that I've got, but and this is not me trying to sell anything, I honestly believe everybody would benefit from having the bars run. Like it says on the box, the least you'll feel is like you've had a good massage. The best you'll feel is like your whole life has changed, like this.